Hey Astro Kids, and welcome back. So today we're going to talk about what it looks like to have a Venus Maha Dasha. So this is a short excerpt from my Vedic Astrology course. If you are interested in learning more about how to get access to this course, the information is down below in the description along with the comments. Today, I will give you this short excerpt for those of you who are interested in learning more about this Venus Maha Dasha period and how this will affect you. What are the goods? What are the bads? What are the lessons that you can gain from this period in time? If you enjoy this, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. This is the Venus Maha Dasha. So after that 7-year period of the Ketu Mahadasha, that will take us through a 20-year period of a Venus Maha Dasha. So this is the longest out of all of the Mahadasha periods, right? There is no Mahadasha period that is longer than Venus. And you would think that that is good because Venus is a beneficial planet. However, this tends to be a very bad and challenging period for many. And we will get into the reason why that is. Now, typically when you're looking at how to judge Venus, you want to look to where Venus is positioned, right? What sign is it in? What house is it in? And where's the Lord of its depositor? So for example, if you had Venus and Gemini, where is Mercury? What house is that in? What is it doing? All of these things need to be taken into consideration. You also want to look at your karmas from Saturn. Why? Because Venus is going to take you into some overindulgences. So this is something important, is paying attention to Saturn. Remember that Saturn is exalted into the sign of Libra. So this is highly important for you to pay attention to the discipline that was gained during the Saturn period. Now, if you were born into a Venus period, that is a different story. But typically that Saturn period is going to come before the Venus period, and it's going to give you the strength to stay disciplined during the temptations of this Venus period. The other thing that you want to look at is if Venus is in its own sign of Taurus or Libra, you can't use that. You have to look at Jupiter because Venus is exalted in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter becomes the higher octave of Venus. Now, the theme of this whole entire period of Venus is going to be about desire. And the other thing is, before we get into the theme, is that the Trikona houses and the Kendra houses are always good houses for a Venus Maha Dasha. Any other house is going to be negative. Because remember that Venus is a beneficial planet. And so if you put it in a Dastanya house or a Marka house, that is going to reverse the influence. Now, even if you're putting it in the 7th house, which is a Marka house, it's a Kendra house. So anytime you put a positive planet in a Kendra house, it reverses the effects. But 2nd house is a negative position for Venus. And particularly because of the fact that that 2nd house is about food, it's about money. And so when Venus comes into that 2nd house, it can splurge a lot. And that is really the theme of this whole entire Venus Maha Dasha period, is desire for the material world, right? So even more than Rahu, this brings desires for material. And so sexual desires tend to be increased during a Venus Maha Dasha period, where you can give into sexual pleasure, where this can be a time where you are drawn to music. This could be a time where you are obsessed with your possessions, obsessed with your looks, This can be a time where relationships are a huge focal point. Your social life is a huge focal point. Business is a huge focal point. You want to increase on your assets. You want to increase on all areas of life. I've seen people in their Venus Maha Dasha. They want a bigger home. They want all of these different things out of life. So material pleasure and a seeking for comfort is increased significantly during this Venus Maha Dasha period. Now, if Venus is positioned correctly, then you might be inclined to get on a new diet where you're taking more care of your health. And so your overall health can be increased, especially if you have a good placement of Venus. Also, you might find yourself getting into a new fashion, a new choice of hairstyle during a Venus Maha Dasha. You might find yourself being more social. Again, that K2 Mahadasha really took you out of the material world where you were more isolated, more spiritual. And so this is a time where you might find yourself coming out of that and being more social, being more friendly during this period of Venus, right? So the other thing is you can get support from females during this time. Venus is the significator of females. This can also be a time where you have an increase in your wealth. This can also be a time where you get married. However, Venus is not the significator of marriage. Jupiter is. And so what can happen during this period is you might get married, but it might be a short-lived marriage. Because Venus is more about attraction, pleasure, sexuality, romance. It's not really about a long-term commitment. Right? So Venus is strictly that energy that is there to seduce or attract us towards a partner. It's not really there to get us into a committed relationship. However, in a man's chart, it does represent the wife, typically. But usually Venus is not about marriage. It is about lust, romance, connection. It's more of a superficial planet. Now, inauspicious placement of Venus in your chart can make you over intoxicated by your success and material gain. You can think very highly of yourself and your pride can increase during this time. And that can give very malefic results for you. Overindulgence can increase. You can experience depression and loss and anxiety, again, because Venus is relying on the material world. So if you're not getting pleasure or comfort from the material, you feel like you're empty during this time. And this gives significant depression. Also, there can be some fluid issues, just like the moon. Venus is a watery planet. So you want to make sure you're taking care of your fluid intake. Making sure that you're getting enough fluid in your body, that it is the proper amount, because you could be low on fluid, you could have too much fluid, you could gain weight during this period. Venus is, again, all about pleasure, so there tends to be an addiction to sweets during a Venus Mahadasha period. There can be excesses in food overall. You can even go the other way, where you are leaning more towards excessive diets, bulimia, all of these things, right? There can be unnecessary loss of money through the splurging, right? Where you feel like you want more pleasure, you want more comfort, you want more possessions in your life. So unnecessary spending can play out. You can have disharmony in your relationships because, again, Venus deals with relationships. So there can be difficulties there within your relationship in terms of the love, in terms of the sex. All of these things can come up in terms of issues. It's not typically going to give divorce, though, because, again, the marriage significator is Jupiter. So this tends to give little problems. Sometimes this can also make people inclined towards affairs, though, where people can seek out multiple partners, where people can seek out to be more sexually explicit. So all of these things can play out during a Venus Mahadasha. This can also be a time of people pleasing. So you might feel like you are doing more for others than they are giving in return. where you want to be nice to everyone, you want to do everything for everyone, because again, Venus is that planet that's about pleasing others, giving others a sense of comfort. So that can come to play during a Venus Mahadasha period. Some of the remedies for this period are changing your behavioral patterns. Again, Venus is all about getting pleasure, comfort, beauty, possessions, all of this. So if you have a negative impulsive behavior where you are seeking out pleasure unnecessarily, changing those habits can actually give you better results. Avoiding greed and anger is very important during this period, and greed and anger tend to be very strong influences during a Venus Mahadasha period. The reason is because greed, because you want more, and anger, because you didn't get what you wanted. That tends to happen during a Venus Mahadasha period. Sacrificing, giving to those who are in need, donating fresh clothes, donating food, all of these things. Fasting on Fridays, which can be difficult because Fridays are Venus days where people tend to want to splurge and enjoy themselves. But fasting on Fridays, if you can do that, can give you some good results. The best time typically for a Venus Mahadasha is going to be your 20s, your 30s, and your 60s. Because again, during the 20s and 30s is typically when people get married. It's typically when people start to get more involved with relationships and with sexual relationships. This can also be a time of business partnerships as well, as people are maturing and getting more involved in society. So it tends to be a great time for that. Also in the 60s and above tends to be a great time because this tends to give a love and appreciation of life. And particularly in the 60s and over, people tend to have close relationships with their grandchildren and they find a lot of peace and mind from that. Now, 30s can be a bit difficult though because, again, there can be this feeling of a void, and it really can come from this feeling of wanting to be successful, wanting to climb to the top. You feel like you want that stability, you want to settle down, and Venus might not give you the material results that you want. You might feel angry and frustrated. And also you can feel a void during the middle of the Mahadasha period. So somewhere around that 10-year mark within the Mahadasha period, there can be an emptiness, a feeling of depression and loss, particularly in a person's life.